Hello, I'm the Learning Enthusiast, Chris Simmons, and welcome to this episode where I'm going to talk about how to make box joints using the software Lightburn, although you can use other vector type of tools, drawing tools, but I use Lightburn for my laser, so that's what I'm going to primarily do designs in. So when I'm talking about box joints, or finger joints, whatever you want to call it. This was done in a box designer online, but sometimes I need to do some custom stuff. So knowing how to do this is a good tool to have. I'll also show you how to do slots. So how to do slots in case you need to put something into a slot. Either it can be a wall, can be just anything that you may want to have a sign or something that you want flush with the base or whatever. So there's many reasons for that. Like I said, I'm going to show how I do it in Lightburn. And I'll show you some little tricks and things to see if everything is going correctly. There is some work involved and some math possibly. And one of the things you really need to understand too is the thickness of your material. Now, you could use what I would call caliper. I have one somewhere here, but you can find them on Amazon. Eye gauging is what I have, but a caliper that can do millimeters and inches and things like that is very handy. So you can measure with the pinchers how thick your material is if you want to be really accurate in your joints. You can also determine your kerf. That is when the laser cuts, it doesn't cut perfectly straight, so you don't have, it's not cutting exactly the amount that you design, so you can do an offset and stuff like that. I will not show that, but you can find plenty of stuff on that. And in my tutorial, I'm just going to assume that my material is 3 millimeters just to make it easy. But like I said, you can adjust when you do your design depending on what you have. So let's move to the Lightburn. And as you can see, I have what the end result's going to be that I've designed. This is what we're going to design, and we're going to do it in real time. I just have this as a reference, and I'm going to move it over. And like I said, the box that I was talking about is about 106 millimeters by 106 millimeters by 63 millimeters tall. So those are good numbers to understand and know. So when we start with our first side, I'm going to start with the sides first and then do the bottom. So let me change. I'm not in millimeters, so make sure you're in millimeters. It's a little bit easier to work with, but so you don't have to deal with percentages and things like that. So if we have the width 106, we're going to have the height 63. And that will become apparent in a second or so. And then I'm going to duplicate it a couple ways. You can right click on it, make sure you have it selected. You can right click. Let me enlarge it a little bit so you can see. So you can right click and say duplicate, or you can do Control D. And then I'm just going to move this over. And I want to make sure that it lines up. So a couple ways to do that. To make sure the edges line up, you can just click and drag the edges that you want to pull together, and they should just snap together. So that's the first point. The next thing is we're going to decide what size. And in this first example, I'm just going to do a single joint. And this is height of 63, so we can make whatever we kind of want. You can try and do something that would be even or something. If we did 30, it's kind of small. I may want to do a little bit more, like 40. So I made this 40 tall, but I need to make sure and do my width the same as my thickness of material. So I'm using 3 millimeter thick. Actually, is what I've claim. That's what I'm using. I didn't actually measure it, but that's for this purposes. It's easier to show that way. So I'm gonna pull it so it snaps to that there, and then I'm going to select the main box and make sure it's in the middle. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this and I'm going to duplicate it. You can just do a right click and duplicate, or Control D. And now that duplicated one, I'm going to change that to a different layer that I'm then going to hide so that it, and click off so that won't be affected. And then I'm going to select the main box and select this other one that we had done. And I'm going to use this first tool here for the weld and all that. And there you have it. Should be now done, that side. And what we're going to do, I can move this a little bit out of the way, a little bit up here. I'm going to then copy that, again, duplicate it, and then flip it horizontally. So I have two that I'm then going to join together. So, and I'm going to use this other bottom thing, and now you have it. So it has both. So that's exactly what we want. And then for this one, let me move this a little bit down. And for this one, I'm going to turn back on that one that we had. Now, before I do that, we have to take into account that this is going to be, this one needs to be a little bit shorter. And what I mean by that is it's going to be, because you're adding 3 millimeters, so you're going to need to make this 3 millimeters shorter, or wider, I should say. And then like that, and then we'll snap these back together, and I'll select the main one, so, and then I want to make sure it's in the middle. Okay, so now I have it that way. But the other thing, let's just make sure when we do this one, if we look at one that we've already done, we want to make sure that this is the correct height as well. So in this case, I'm going to add, but I'm not going to add here. I'm going to subtract. So, and I'll show you, and when you're doing a subtraction, you can leave it the same width or shape. Whenever you're adding, you want to make sure you have less than what you're going to add, because when you add it, obviously you're adding some to it. So we're going to select these two together, and we're going to weld them. And then, like I did with the others, I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to flip it, and then I'm going to select it. Make sure they're both selected and put them together. And here we have it. And you can see it should be the same as this one. We haven't done the bottom yet. That's the next part. So when I do the bottom, what I did in this case, and you'll see in a second, I can move this off. The bottom I made have tabs. So if you look at the bottom, I'm going to pull it over. I made it have tabs. So all the sides instead will have a cutout. So, and there's some stuff to figure out when you're going to do this. And the one thing we didn't do, but we can do now too, is we can determine, or we can, if we remember to, I do remember the sizing, so that will help. So we want our bottom to be 106 as well, but it's only here, so it's actually going to be less when we create the box for the bottom. So let me just reset here, and I'm going to do a box. So let's see if our math will work. This can be the top layer. If we do Should we do 103 and 103? Because we're going to add 3 and 3. Maybe it should be 100, right? So let's do 100 and 100. Because if you look at this, so this is another thing you can do too, is you can kind of see where is this, right? So it should fit between here, and I'll show you in a second why that is. Because you need, so this side is going to sit over here, and it's going to need 3 millimeters of space when it's interfacing with this. So if that makes sense, you don't want it to jet out further. So this is what size we're going to have. Let's create the bottom joints as well. And one of the things I want to do is line it up. And I'm going to use this one, this second side as my line up. And then I'm going to make another box. If we remember our calculations, it's going to be a 40 width and a 3 height. Hit escape, select it, or let's delete that one, select this one. And we're going to do kind of what we did before. Now, I'm going to snap this here. And I'm going to select this main one. And I'm going to this to make sure it's in the middle. So we're going to do what we did before. And I'm going to duplicate this one. And actually I might duplicate more, but because once we... It's always good to have these extra in case you need them. But so I'll take this one that's duplicate and put it on a different layer. Again on the blue layer that I'm going to then hide. And then I'm going to take this one with this one here. And as before, we're going to weld them together. So that's done. For this one, let's show this. Let's do this, right? So, and we'll weld. We're not going to flip this. So instead, we're going to turn this 90 degrees. We'll turn the bottom and do each one. And there's a couple ways we can do it. We can just line these up and then keep moving them over and doing that, right? That would probably be the easiest. We still need to do this one as well. And that's going to be a little bit harder to line up, but there's a few ways we can do that. So off the cuff, I'm doing it a certain way because here's going to be a little bit harder to line up. But let's do this. And there's probably much easier ways to do a lot of this. So what I'm going to do is take this edge. Let me move it a little bit. You can see it. So I'm going to take this edge and just line it up here. I already have that selected, so I can just reselect this one below it. And since these are the only two connected, I can just click that. And now we have that side as well. And then if we go to this bottom and we just basically flip it another 90 degrees. But see, I didn't keep the thing yet again. So I say, you need to duplicate those squares a few times and just have them so you always have it ready. I think we did 40 and we did 3 as the height. So you can then select it and then duplicate it, maybe duplicate it again. So just have these handy off to the side. Now, putting this in the middle, would that work? We can see that, but I want to make sure that it's in the right place every time. So that's always my concern. And just by lining this up guarantees that, right? I can use it as a template, and I can take this one, get over here, and let me here. I'm going to take this edge and put it right there, snap it right there, like I did before, and then we'll weld those two together. So we have one more side to do. If you can see that this is almost becoming 106 by 106. Which is, if you look at this one, that's what it is. We just have one more line to do. We move this 90 degrees. Refocus everything. And one more to do. Yeah, I'll take one from over here. So but did it really work? So let's just make sure. I'm going to get that edge here. I have the edge where they two go, and it should snap. Because you just click it, press it down, and hold it. So then you put this together like that, and we'll just do that weld. So now the bottom is done. It's 106, 106, just like the previous one. So let's read this, but we need to do this one. So there's a couple ways to do it. You can just either overlay it with something else. We can try it. If we snap this and put it in the middle, let's see if that will work. Oops, wrong one. Just for, so we're not gonna. So this should, let's see if we go up from here. So I'm just holding the shift and move so it moves straight up. Just want to make sure it's completely, you can see it's slightly off here. So let's just make sure it's correct. So I have it now completely lined up. I'll just shift and go straight down. It looks like that is in the right place. So we're going to take this and this, and we're going to go this guy. Nope. So this is not touching, you can tell. So we need to make sure this snaps into place. So I'm going to just take the edge and pull it. And then I just want to make sure this is lined up again. So, okay, and I'm going to weld it there. So let's see how we did there. Compared to our actual template. It's 106.63, 663. And we're just going to check it because I did use different sizes, so it's not going to match up. But as long as the heights are about right. So what happens, and then we can copy these. So we'll copy each side, right? So then we'll have, or duplicate, and then you have 4 of each. And then you can see, if you want to make sure this kind of goes together, it's going to go like that. If we'll need to move this, rotate this 90 degrees to see if it will line up. And I would just take these corner edges here and snap them. This one we'll flip. And then this one we will pull 90 degrees, and I'm going to flip it the horizontal. And if we look at this, just pick. This is going to come up because you're going to have to, if you can see in this thing, this part needs to come together. So that's why this overlaps. That's why these top and bottom ones are longer than these at the bottom, because you have to account for this little 3 millimeter over, and this part will go over that, and it will work, no problem. So a couple of other things, let's just look at, if you're going to do a slot, so and we could use this as an example. So let's say this is a sign that we'll be using. Make it a little bit, and then I'm going to make a base for it. It doesn't have to be accurate, right? So we'll have that, and so this is a sign. It's a small sign, let's say. So we're going to need to put this into a slot. So the best way to do that, let's say this is going to be it, and we have to determine, this is all, we're using 3 millimeter, but make sure when you're doing this always to check your thickness of your material. You know, you want to make sure your material is correct, and depending on how much of a part you want to have. Now I'm going to duplicate this. This is the easiest way for me, I think. And I'm going to select this other box. Let me just and put it in here, and I'm going to put it in the middle because I want this particular dead in the middle for my stand. So I'm going to take these two and basically do that weld there and combine. And basically what's going to happen is when you cut this area is where this will then go into, as long as the widths are the same, and in this material here that I'm talking about, like I said, you have to account for the thickness of it, because that's how far, you can look at it, this part. So basically this part, which is 3 millimeters, you can't see the measurement, but this is 3 millimeters, this is 3 millimeters, which is for the thickness of this, right? So you're going to have that, and then this, not only that's the thickness of all this, so it needs to, that makes it work. So that's how to do slots. The only other thing I wanted to show was how to do two box joints. So very simply similar. The only thing I want to show is just, I'm just going to make a duplicate of this. This is really just for what I'm showing. And of course you will remember all the other stuff, but remember all the other things. So we're going to do 2. So you have to decide, what length you want them to be. Let's make this 20. It's the height, and of course width would be 3, because that's the width of my material thickness, and the thickness of my material. And I'm going to make 2. And what I'm going to do, and you gotta kind of figure out where you want them and try to get them even, but I'm gonna of course line them up so they're straight. We can try to distribute them evenly, but I haven't really found a simple way to do that here. So some of it's by eye, some of it's figure out. But now once you have them, I would suggest grouping them. Makes it easy. And then move them to where you want them. So we're going to do something like that. Right, so then we'll select 2 here. We'll select this. But before, we'll do what we did before and do the duplicate. And then change the layer. And then we'll hide it. And then if you go back here, and you select the 2 things, you weld it together. See, that didn't quite work, so why didn't it work? Let's make sure when we come back to here, did we snap it correctly? Just choose the line here. You can see this and snap it. There we go. And we make sure, usually these things don't work if you don't have it snapped properly. So now we did. And then on the other side, like I said, we would show that. I want to make sure, grab this, I've grouped them and make sure they shift and hold, and there they should be connected. And we'll select the other one and we'll just use the weld, and there you have it. So if we do this together, will this work? Maybe not. So why didn't that work? Let's go back. We probably needed to make sure these are in the right spot. Make sure everything's lined up first, and then weld it. Let's see now. So troubleshooting is the biggest thing I would say you want to do. So one of the things is, are these the same height? There's some slight difference in the height. So let's just make sure. We might have changed the height. So just make sure the heights match. In this case. So I'm copying and pasting this part. So Control C. Just do okay. Just make sure they match in their height and everything, right? So, and then we'll take this one and make sure they're correctly distributed, and we'll weld. Let's see if that. No, so obviously they're not in the same spot. So this is a good troubleshooting exercise, like I said, but we can also just line these up. So another way to do this is I can just line it up like this. And what I'll do, this is why I like Lightburn, because there's a lot of ways to, I'm going to get this corner here. I'm going to snap it to this corner if you can see it. So I'm going to take that. And there you go. And then I'm going to select this other square and put them together. So now it should be correct. If we pull these apart, we can put them back together and they will fit. So that's how to troubleshoot when you run into issues that don't, you just keep putting them together and seeing how they match up together. And when they don't match, that's when you take it off and then redo it. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you learned some stuff of how to do these box joints, so you can do your own, not necessarily have to do something like that. Because if I did a structure I wanted to do some structures for miniatures, and that is how I created a single box joint here to put these together, so they'll be perfectly 90 degrees and things. And I used one, but you could use multiple as much as you want. You can figure out the math of how many you want and all that. And there's a lot of math just like if you make a mistake, as I showed, I did a few mistakes. We just go back, try different things until we get them to meet up correctly, looks correct and everything. And we know in our head that we'll do it. Of course, when you do it in the laser and you cut it out, that's when you'll know if what you did is correct. It's really just trial and error. That's how I learn, just doing different trial and error. And it's always good to do that and to just do some figuring out of how these things fit. And it's just a learning process. So even if you fail, just try again, try to fix your things and try again. I really hope this was helpful. Hope you were able to learn how to do a few things in Lightburn, or just to understand how two joints go together, box joints or whatever you want to call them, finger joints. And that's useful so that you can do that and have that as a tool, have that as something else you can do. And of course the slots as well. So you can use those all in combination to do different things. So thank you again for joining this episode. Please like this episode, share with anyone else you might know who'd be interested, and follow our channel, subscribe. And thanks again for watching. Remember to never stop learning.